one area where youth can be led astray or they can be led the right way. This area has very, very important implications. This is the area of sexual choices. Many youth have definitely disrupted otherwise promising life by having sex too early, sex when they weren't ready. Fortunately, there are people that are trying to promote healthy attitudes towards sex, valuing sex and love as one. Today we have a representative from the Waupaca Pregnancy Information Center. Brenda Hansen has been working at this place trying to cultivate awareness about the problems of improving attitudes towards sexuality. Help us welcome Brenda to today's presentation.
Thank you. I'm here basically to share with you some of the things that I've learned working with many, many people who have made some unfortunate decisions in their lives that have brought about a lot of pain and a lot of turmoil in their lives. And so one of the things we want to do today is to share a little bit about some of the common things that our clients have in common that makes them at risk to getting involved with unhealthy and risky behaviors, especially sexual behaviors that lead to some problems. And so what I have for people today is what we call the Pregnancy Information Center's Client Candidate Test. These are some things, some risky things that we see in our clients' lives that we want to share. And what I have here is a questionnaire that I'm going to hand out to you, and I would like you just to go briefly through it and circle those items on there that you feel apply to yourself. And so I'm going to just hand them out and have you take a look at some of those questions there. And the thing is, I'm not going to be checking these. I'm not, going to be looking them over. This isn't a test that I'm going to ask you to hand back in. So what I want you to do is take a look at the test and be as honest as you possibly can, because this is to help you, not just to go through and just discard. So as you go through that, you're going to notice there are some questions about not just sexual behavior, but other behaviors as well. And that's because we see that our clients who are at risk for extramarital sex are also involved usually in a number of other risky behaviors. So we're going to get started by just going down through the questions, and I'm going to explain a little bit and why we ask the questions and some of the answers or some of the information that you need to make healthy decisions about your sexuality. The first question on there is, are you and or your partner between the ages of 15 and 24? That seems like a pretty simple question, but the reason that we ask it is that the vast majority of all unplanned pregnancies and nearly 60% of all abortions occur in women in this age group. Another 21% of abortions are performed on women between the ages of 25 and 29. So this age group is the highest risk group. Number 2 is, are you and your partner single? 82% of all abortions are performed on unmarried women. So the more at risk you are between these ages and being single makes you more at risk of getting pregnant and then going ahead and aborting as well. Number 3 is, are you or any of your friends sexually active? And the reason we have it underlined, any of your friends, is because peer pressure is tremendous. Peer pressure is much stronger than most teens and young adults realize. And the peer pressure doesn't have to be overt. It doesn't have to be somebody saying, well, how come you're the only one not doing it? All you have to do is think that your friends are doing it, and you'll find it harder to decline when you find yourself in an intense situation. And so we want you to be aware of that pressure, that subtle pressure that's going on, as well as the overt comments that we so often hear with people. Number 4 is, are you on or contemplating taking any form of contraceptive for any reason? And the reason that we underline for any reason is because many people who take contraceptives for reasons other than anticipating a sexual encounter. For example, we have many of our clients who originally start on the pill because they have irregular periods or some other problems, are more susceptible to getting involved in sexual experiences. Contraceptives often give this false sense of security. They think, well, it's foolproof, and it's not. Even some of the most highest forms of contraceptives, and in fact, things like Depo-Provera, which is an injection that people get, the contraceptive pill, what was called a birth control pill, are like 95% effective if they're taken correctly, if they're taken all the time, at the times that they're supposed to be taken. However, we see constantly numbers of clients coming in who have been on every type of contraceptive and end up getting pregnant. In fact, I'm working with 2 clients right now, both of whom had tubal ligation. And they're still pregnant because the tubal ligation failed. So even surgical tying of the tubes is not necessarily going to be foolproof. I've also had clients who, where their husbands or their partners have had vasectomies and they get pregnant. So it's real important to understand that there isn't any 100% guarantee with any contraceptive. The only 100% guaranteed, safe, and sure way not to get pregnant or not to get a sexually transmitted disease is through abstinence. And so we want you to be very, very aware of that. Now, as long as I'm talking a little bit about sexually transmitted diseases, STDs, we have to understand that there's new information coming in that shows us that even those contraceptive methods that were normally thought to be very good against STDs are proving not to be. In fact, I have a sheet here about condoms, which is something that has been touted over the years as being a wonderful way to protect against STDs, and especially the AIDS virus. But as you can see from this little sheet that I have here, if we have a hole in a condom that's like the size of, I would say a softball, the AIDS virus is like the size of a period at the end of a sentence. And so when you compare that, if you have just the tiniest hole in a condom, the AIDS virus is going to get through. The other thing you need to remember is that condoms are made of a porous latex. And so, again, you can't necessarily be sure that it's going to be protecting against something as small as a virus, especially the AIDS virus, which is extremely tiny. And the other thing to know about condoms is that even right on the package, it will tell you that you should not keep them in extremely hot or extremely cold conditions, because it will wear on the latex and they can erode and break faster or whatever. And yet condoms are shipped all over the country in trucks that are not temperature controlled at all. So you don't know how long that condom has been in transport. You don't know how long it's been sitting on the shelf. So you have no guarantee that the condom that you're talking about is really going to protect you against a disease like AIDS. The other thing that has just come to light within the last year is that our most common sexually transmitted disease is called the human papillomavirus. Now, we used to call this genital warts. And the thing about genital warts is that it spreads very, very quickly because the symptoms of it may be just underneath the surface. You may not see it right away. You may not know you have it until a blister occurs. The other thing about this particular STD is that it's not contagious through bodily fluids. You don't get it by passing bodily fluids. You get it from skin to skin. So it doesn't matter if you're wearing a condom or not. If your skin comes in contact with an infected skin, especially if you have an open sore, you're very likely to get genital warts. Now, normally, I guess most people would think, well, what's genital warts? Big deal. What's the problem with that? Well, the latest information that we've received through the Institute for Sexual Health says that 97% of all cervical cancer cases are now directly linked to the HPV virus. So not only is it the most common STD out there, but it can cause cancer, and if it's not caught early enough, it can kill you. So we now have the most common STD out there, also a deadly virus. And so we want to make people very, very aware that this is something that they need to really think very long and hard about, and not look at condoms as something that's going to protect them forever and ever. It just simply won't. The other thing that we need to remember is that contraceptive injections and implants can cause major disruptions in the menstrual cycle. And I get so many clients that come in who are on Depo-Provera, which is an injection that they get every 3 months. And they're told that at the end of 3 months they need to get a pregnancy test before they're given another shot. If they don't get the shot right at the end of the 3 months. Well, I've got girls coming in every 3 months for a pregnancy test because they're scared to death that they might be pregnant, because they're not getting their menstrual period like they thought they were supposed to get. So they get really nervous, and I sit and talk with them and I say, this was supposed to make you feel better, and yet it makes you now more scared. Where's the peace of mind that you were looking for using this particular type of contraceptive? And so we very strongly encourage people, again, not to look at contraceptives as being the foolproof method of preventing STDs and the pregnancies that everybody's so scared of. The other thing, the next question that we have on here is, have you or any of your friends been tested for sexually transmitted diseases? Fear of STDs and pregnancy go hand in hand. If you have a scare with one, you will probably have a scare with the other. And the other thing that most people don't quite understand is that if you have multiple partners, it isn't just their viruses and diseases that you're being exposed to. It's anybody else's disease or viruses that they've been with that you're being exposed to. And I have another chart here that talks about the sexual exposure, and as you can see on it, if you've had even 4 partners, and each one of those 4 partners has had 4 partners, you are now at 15 people that you've been exposed to. So we want to make sure, again, that you understand the risks that are involved when you start talking about becoming sexually active. A lot of people think, well, I'll only be with one person, and he won't be with anybody else either. But if he's been with other people before he gets to you, some of these viruses, like the HIV, can lay dormant for up to 10 years. So if you have, if he's got a clean bill of health right now, but has been exposed to somebody 4 or 5 years ago, you could still end up getting HIV. Very, very dangerous thing to do. So again, we want to really make sure people understand that this is not a recreational activity here. This is something that can get very, very serious if we're not very careful about it. Number 6 seems to be totally related at first look. It says, are you or any of your friends involved with drugs and or alcohol? In a recent parade survey, 85% of the respondents identified drinking and or drug use as a major factor leading to premarital sex. If you're drinking, you're not making good decisions. Your thinking is impaired, and you're probably more open to and vulnerable to pressures from other people. And so if you're involved with drugs and alcohol, you very, very likely may be exposing yourself to the possibility of having a sexual experience before you're ready for that. Number 7, are you struggling in school or find it difficult to find and hold a job? Again, this doesn't necessarily, when you first read it, seem like it has anything to do with what we're talking about. But we have found that teens and young adults who drop out of school or fail to find or hold a job are more vulnerable to the pressures of premarital sex simply because they have more time on their hands. One teen who had chosen abstinence commented, I'm too tired after all my daily activities in school and work to become sexually active. Keeping busy in a positive way keeps me out of trouble. And that's another thing that the government has latched on when they recently freed up some funds for abstinence programs. A lot of the secular organizations got on the bandwagon by saying, well, we'll create after-school programs or other youth group type programs and young adult programs that will keep these young people focused and busy, and so that they're not constantly being bombarded by these types of pressures, and therefore have a better chance of avoiding that. Number 8, have you or any of your friends been in trouble with the law? Again, that doesn't seem at first glance to have much to do with what we're saying, but defying authority is a prevalent attitude amongst those who have premarital sex. If your parents are telling you you're not supposed to have it, if society in general is telling you you're not supposed to do it, there is a certain percentage of young adults who will defy that, and simply because they're told not to do it, will do it. The only thing I can tell people in that respect is that sooner or later it will catch up with you. The consequences always do. Number 9 and 10 we put together. If you are a female, is your boyfriend 3 or more years older than yourself? And if you are a male, is your girlfriend 3 or more years younger than yourself? In the survey I mentioned before from Parade magazine, 83% of the respondents cited pressure from their partner as a major factor leading to premarital sex. The greater the difference in ages, the more likely it is for the older, more experienced partner to persuade the younger partner into going further than they planned. And we see that on a wide basis at the pregnancy center where I'm at. In fact, we often have a number of our clients who have had some type of contact or are currently seeing the same guy. So we have one person who, and usually this is an older man who will float from one of our clients to another in this little mess. And in fact, I know we had one particular man who was actively involved with, I think, at least 3 or 4 of our clients at different times. And he had fathered 13 children. He was quite a bit older. He was a good 10 to 12 years older than most of the women that he was dating. And the problem that we see so often is that if he's a very charming man, these girls tend to fall for that. You know, he pours on the charm and tells them what wonderful people they are and how beautiful and whatever. They find themselves being drawn into this relationship, and then they don't find out until it's too late that he's already done the same number on a number of other people. So we really caution people when you start going out looking into relationships to try to stick with people a little bit closer to you in age, especially if you're under 18. And if just the emotional thing doesn't get to you, you have to understand in Wisconsin, if you're under 18, any sex with anybody is illegal. And he can be arrested, you can be arrested. It's just illegal. In this state, you need not be doing that. So we have a brochure, I don't know if I brought it along today, but it says sex is worth going to jail for. You know, and Wisconsin is really getting tough on that, on those laws, because they do see so many older men preying on younger women. Number 11, have you experienced divorce or some other broken relationships in your family? Now, this takes many people by surprise that I would even put this in here. But you have to understand that when we take a look at our statistics with the clients that we see coming through the center, almost every single client that's come through the doors of our center has come from a dysfunctional family. Usually it's with an absent father through divorce or separation. But even if the family is physically intact, we find that there is an emotional absence of one of the parents. So either the dad is an alcoholic, drug addict, maybe mom is a workaholic, whatever. There's an absence of a real strong parent, a couple parenting together. And so that has become one of the major things that we've seen happen. And I have a couple of cases, one in particular that just really strikes my heart, because the young girl was a valedictorian, was going to graduate at the top of her class, and found out she was pregnant. And in the school system she was in, she was not allowed to finish school with her class. She would have to take courses at home and be tutored. And I just felt so terrible for her, and I found out that One of the major things that she got sexually active with her boyfriend was because her parents had just gone through a divorce. And what she was doing was looking for security, looking for somebody to make her feel safe again. And so she'd been seeing the fellow for quite some time, but it didn't get physical until she went through this trauma of a divorce. And so, we want people who are going through traumatic situations to understand that it's very common, and it's understandable that you want to feel safe, that you want to feel protected, that you want to have something that's grounding you. But a physical relationship isn't going to do that. It's only going to add to your worries, because then you have to worry about all of the consequences that go along with that. Not just the STDs and not just the fear of pregnancy, but there's also the emotional, what happens if this guy leaves. The breaking heart is probably the most traumatic thing that most of our clients end up going through. Even those who do have STDs and even those who get pregnant. The bigger problem is, how do you handle emotionally when the person that you thought you were loved, who you thought loved you, and whom you thought you loved, suddenly isn't there for you anymore. So we really want to take a look at where clients are emotionally too when we talk with them about their sexual behavior. Number 12 and 13 we also put together. Do you have any alcoholic or abusive close family, friends, or relatives? And have you ever experienced sexually inappropriate behavior by any close family, friends, or relatives? Again, what we find is that children who experience abuse in any form have little respect, self-respect, and become sexually active earlier than those who come from loving families. In the Parade survey, 97% of the respondents said having parents they can talk to would help reduce the risk of teenage pregnancy. Another 93% said having loving parents would help. The implication is clear. If a person is not finding stability and love at home, he or she will go looking for it elsewhere. And I had a client who had been date raped on a number of occasions, who very quickly after those experiences pretty much figured, well, I'm not good for anything now anyway. And so she just became more and more sexually active. And that's such a sad thing, because we really believe that there's no one who is unsalvageable. Just because you've had bad experiences happen to you, just because you may not be a virgin anymore, it doesn't mean that you're not worth something. You're very valuable, and we want you to know that and want to show you that your life can still have tremendous meaning and can be a very positive influence on people around you, especially if you get to the point where you can share those experiences and how you got over them. And so we really encourage people who have had a really rough childhood to know that they can start over again. There is such a thing as a second virginity, and we can help them get started with that by making a pledge. The other thing, too, when you talk about relationships of this sort, is that so often we find our clients, when they're talking about them looking for security and for someone they can bond with, we find that is the number one reason why our clients become sexually active in the first place. When we find that that's happened with a client, we usually sit down and take them through our relationships brochure. This is called Making an Informed Decision About Relationships, and what it has is a wonderful booklet that we work with. Whether they're in a current relationship or not, we want to make sure that they understand that relationships are more than feel-good experiences. They require commitment and communication, security, and that's what our clients are looking for anyway. So what we want to do is take them through this particular brochure, because it has 3 different sections in it. The first section talks about just relationships in general. What is important to you in a relationship? What are your feelings and opinions about the person that you're currently seeing or that you would like to meet someday? It's real important that you study this and evaluate the relationship that you're in right now. If you wait until you get into the middle of a relationship without thinking ahead of time, what's important, what do I really want to see happen, you tend to go with the flow. and any plans, any dreams you might have had kind of get set by the wayside. So what we want to do is take a look at what's important to you in a relationship before you get into one, or if you're in one now, to evaluate, is this the kind of relationship that you really want to be in? So we take them through this. If they have a partner, we'll sit down with the partner and go through it as a couple. And we ask them, what's important to them, what kinds of things do they want to see for themselves? Do they want to be married someday? Do they want children someday? Is career important to them? Is their job? That type of thing. And is it also important to the person that you're currently seeing? If it is, great. Let's find, those areas that we're strong on and strengthen them even more. If it's not, maybe we need to look at what is the weak spot here and try to correct that. The second part of the questionnaire is on what happened in the past. What things went wrong before so that we don't keep making the same mistakes over and over again. And as you go through this, it will ask you, how important is it to you that your partner sees you as the only one? To be faithful to that person, how would you rate that? And inevitably we get our clients rating very high that they want their partner to be faithful to them throughout life. And they'll often get the partner, if he comes in, and ask him the same question that will also be important to him. But when I ask them, well, what do you believe your partner really believes? Or do you really think that they can be faithful for life? That's when suddenly we start seeing them start to waver. And so what we're trying to get them to understand is that trust is a huge issue in relationships. If you can't be 100% sure that this person is going to be faithful to you through the rest of your life, you really need to work on why. Ask your have in this making informed decisions about relationships brochure some information on sexually transmitted diseases and the risks of pregnancy. And since I've already gone over that, I'm not going to say too much about it right now. But Section 3 is probably the most vital part of this whole little brochure, because what it does is ask you to write down 3 things that you would like to accomplish in the next 5 to 10 years. And we want you to actually write those down, not just to have them in your head, but put them down in black and white. Because if you don't have a plan and you don't know what you want to accomplish, you're never going to get there. So we want you to actually write that down, and then we have to start setting some goals on how to reach that. I'm going to get back to that in just a minute, but I think I want to finish out the rest of this test that we were doing before we do that. Question number 14 on this test that we were doing says, do you believe that pregnancy is the worst thing that could happen to you if you have sex outside of marriage? If your biggest fear is pregnancy, chances are you'll simply turn to some form of birth control method to allay your fears instead of abstaining from sex altogether. And as I mentioned before, contraceptives often give a person a false sense of security. Pregnancy, yes, is a serious consequence of having premarital sex, but AIDS and cancer and many other of these STDs that we're talking about can cause lifelong problems, if not kill you. And I also have to stop at this point and remind people that pregnancy only, physically affects half of our population, the female half. And it only affects those women for about 72 hours out of any 30-day period. When we talk about STDs, anybody can get STDs anytime. So I'm far more concerned about the STD rate than I am about the pregnancy rate. STDs can do a whole lot more damage. And the statistics that we see now are talking about 12,000 new cases of STDs in this country every single day. That's like 3.5 million cases a year. And most of those STDs are aimed right at the teenagers. that's the most sexually active group. I also asked the question, have you or any of your friends had an abortion? Most post-abortives are facing a loss like any other person who experiences the death of a child. However, in this society, they are not given permission to grieve that loss. Therefore, they sometimes get stuck in the early stages of grieving. For instance, they remain in denial, or anger and bitterness develops. At the same time, their subconscious yearns to replace the child that was lost. And we frequently see post-abortives coming to us asking for pregnancy tests right around the anniversary dates of when they had an abortion or when the due date of their baby that was supposed to be born is due. And so what we find is that we have people that have gotten an abortion and think, well, that will cure everything will be fine now. But actually nothing has really changed. They're still in the same type of situation that they were when they got the abortion in the first place. So we see them repeating the same mistakes over and over again, and that's why we really, that's why we include this question in there, because it's so likely that if they've had an abortion or know someone who has, that again they'll think that this is an easy answer, and so they don't have to worry about the consequences of having sex outside of marriage. So that's why we go over this. 16 is, do you believe that abortion will erase the problem, which goes back to what I was saying before. If you think this is an easy answer, it isn't. We deal almost daily, on a daily basis, with post-abortive people who come in who are experiencing different types of trauma, what we call post-abortion stress. And some of the symptoms include nightmares, flashbacks. Depression is huge. Right now we have probably about half our clients on antidepressants. And we're talking late teens, early 20s. And to have these people on antidepressants already is really concerning. Many are suicidal. Many get involved with drugs and alcohol, trying to get rid of the feelings that go along with having had an abortion. And so these types of things are just something that we need you to understand, that it's not an easy answer. It doesn't fix anything. And if you've had one abortion, you're more likely to get pregnant again if you don't go through some type of post-abortion counseling and education program, which we provide at the center. Number 17 says, do you believe there is no such thing as absolute right and wrong? If you believe that everything's relative and it all depends on the situation, I can guarantee you will soon come a time in your life where you won't be sure what is the right thing to do. In the heat of passion, you may not have the time or the emotional wherewithal to evaluate the situation and make a good choice. All it takes is a second and a failure to say, no, this is wrong, to have your life change forever, and there's no going back. Those who have explored their value systems prior to getting involved in a relationship and have set some definite boundaries will be able to withstand the temptations placed before them. They will have an automatic response and will be more willing to wait for the better things life has to offer them. I have a wonderful tape called Sex Has a Price tape by Pam Stencil. She talks about dating and some things you can do to make sure that you can stay with the pledge of abstinence you've made. One of the things she says is for the girls who are going on a date to take a quarter with them. And if things get a little bit too hot and heavy with their partner, she should take the quarter and hand it to her boyfriend and say, well, you call my dad, and if he says we can go a little bit further, then we will. And of course, that usually is enough to put a halt to things getting beyond your control or beyond what you're ready for. The other thing is that if you do choose abstinence, very often you'll be ridiculed for that. And she has another wonderful little analogy or a little story that she tells about one of the clients that she was working with who had chosen abstinence but was getting ragged on by her friends. And Pam told this young girl that, the next time somebody starts talking to you about choosing abstinence, you can turn to them and say, any day of the week, any time I want, I can become exactly like you. But you will never, ever again be exactly like me. It pays to be abstinent, and you'll feel better about yourself. You can stand up and look yourself in the mirror and know that you haven't lost anything, or keeping something very safe and sacred for your marriage. Number 18 says, do you believe that sex is okay between two people regardless if they are married, just as long as they love each other? That's one of the tests in our relationships brochure, and we get almost every one of our clients saying yes to this question. It's okay between two people as long as they love each other. But this type of thinking indicates a lack of understanding concerning what true love is all about. True love is about commitment. The average length of time a relationship lasts after sex is introduced is, guess what, about 3 weeks. Most pregnancies aren't detected until 8 or 9 weeks after the sexual encounter. So by that time, the person you thought would be there forever may be long gone. Number 19, is the relationship with your boyfriend or girlfriend the most important thing in your life? I'm not saying that relationships aren't important or that your partner isn't important. But romantic feelings cloud good decision-making. Fear of losing a relationship with someone who makes you feel warm and safe in love can cause you to do things that you ordinarily wouldn't do. Afterwards, guilt sets in along with anger and resentment. All your relationships begin to suffer, including the one you tried so hard to hang on to. Human relationships are important, but they must not become the all-encompassing object of your life. That's not love, it's obsession. So step back, take a look at why this person's so important to you. If it's for security, there are other ways to feel secure, other ways that you can fulfill that need in your life without bonding to a person and getting in over your head when it comes to sexuality. The final question on this is, do you live from one moment to the next without regard to a plan or purpose for your life? And this goes back to the final section of our relationships brochure. Failure to plan is a plan to fail. Most people who become sexually active do not start out with that intention. The most common response I hear when I ask someone why a relationship became physical is, it just happens. On the other hand, those people who remain chaste until marriage usually have goals written down and a plan of action on how to reach them. And I would just encourage you not to let someone else or the circumstances of the moment dictate your whole life. Write down your dreams, your goals, your aspirations, and set up a plan to reach them. If pregnancy or an STD do not fit into those plans, you need to take steps now to make sure that such a situation doesn't happen. Get it in your head what you're going to say and how you're going to respond. And if you do that, you will find yourself far happier. Now, the other thing I often tell my clients when I go through the relationships brochure and talk to them about abstinence is, I know you don't want to hear this. I know you want an easier answer or one that feels better to you. But in all honesty, after seeing everything I have with the number of people that I've dealt with, there isn't any other answer I can give you in good conscience other than to wait. To wait until you're married. The last thing you want to give your spouse on your wedding night is an STD. So if you choose now to make a pledge to each other to wait until marriage, that can do more to bind the two of you together than anything we can do physically. And so we would really encourage you to actually make a vow of abstinence with your partner and plan to keep it that way until your wedding day. I think that you're going to be much more content and happy. And we're here to tell you we don't want you to be a client in our center. If we could do anything, we'd love to put ourselves out of business. But because people continue to get into relationships and become physical in those relationships, we are going to continue to exist. And so we're trying to keep you out of our center. And if we can do that by sharing some of this information with you, we really want to do that. I have some other brochures up here, and you're welcome to take a look at those. There's information on abstinence. There's a wonderful booklet called 5 Reasons You Need the Piece of Paper. We get a lot of clients in who tell us while they're living with their partner to test the waters, to see if they're compatible. This brochure will talk to you a little bit about that and tell you the reasons why those arguments really don't hold a lot of water. And we want you to know the truth about what happens when people live together and then get married. First of all, most people who live together don't get married. And secondly, those who do end up getting married usually have very short marriages because the commitment wasn't there from the beginning. And so we want you to take a look at some of those brochures. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
What is the media's role in this? Do you find a lot of negative portrayal of sexuality in the media, or does the media ever aid your struggle?
The media never aids our struggle. What we've found happening is that movies and TV and the songs that people listen to, they're constantly being bombarded with this message that sex has no consequences. And I live day in and day out with people who realize the hardest way possible that sex does have consequences. Sex outside of marriages has devastating consequences. But when you watch a TV show, when you watch a movie, most of the time they're hopping in and out of bed, never talking about STDs, never talking about if there's anything to do with pregnancy, well, get an abortion and it's all over with it, and you don't have to worry about the consequences. But like I said, consequences aren't just the physical. I have another handout that I have called Consequences of Premarital Sex. And this one talks about what happens when you have sex. The first thing you have to do when you decide to have sex is decide if you should use contraceptives. If you say, yes, I'm going to use contraceptives, you have to understand that the possible pregnancies, nothing is 100% effective. Health hazards resulting from the contraceptives. We're finding more and more people, the risk of cancer, breast cancer goes up, the risk of other kinds of cancers go up, especially if you're smoking. Those things go way up. Some of our clients have been on different contraceptives where the doctors didn't check their background, and they're having blood clots and strokes and that type of thing. And the matter of, just the common sense tells you if you keep pumping yourself full of artificial hormones, that's going to have an effect on you sometime in your life. I get more and more people coming in who find they can't have babies, can't get pregnant because they've been on contraceptives for such a long time. Now, their doctors will tell them, well, that had nothing to do with it. And yet we're seeing a higher and higher level of people who can't get pregnant in this country. Infertility is very high right now. And, although the doctors in the scientific world say that there's not a connection, I have to wonder. And so do the clients that come in. Now they're feeling guilty about using contraceptives all those years and not being able to get pregnant because they waited so long to try. If you say no to contraceptives, then you really risk pregnancy. If you do get pregnant, you have to ask yourself if you decide to keep the baby or adopt out, to place for adoption. You have to wonder about your child's future. You have to wonder about, should I get married? If you're going to stay single, how does that going to impact you on your financial level and all the other types of levels? Raising a single child alone is very difficult. And what will be found are more children are abused when somebody new moves into the house, and that's another reason that we talk about the 5 reasons you need a piece of paper. If 2 people are living together, the statistics on child abuse skyrocket. So those are types of things that you have to consider if you decide to have sex and get pregnant. Divorce rates, you're talking 80% of all forced marriages end in divorce. You drop out of school most likely. There's a loss of continued education and development, low-paying jobs, financial problems, welfare support, inadequate parenting, low self-esteem, social stigma, all of that's on here. If you decide to abort, there's all of these post-abortion stress symptoms that we see happening. The physical problems include damage to the cervix, so even if you get pregnant again, you may not be able to carry through because the cervix is now weakened. Perforation of the uterus, death, bleeding, sterility, complications in future pregnancies, including anytime they go in to do an abortion, any place that they touch in the womb with the suction leaves a scar, and any scar inside the womb means the baby can't implant there, so the chances of a person actually being able to get pregnant and then carry that pregnancy through is very slim, the more abortions you have. So miscarriage is very common amongst abortion, post-abortive. On the contrast, if you say no to having sex until you're married, you have freedom from pregnancy, freedom from hurry-up weddings, freedom from adoption decisions, freedom from abortion decisions, freedom from guilt, freedom from sexual transmitted diseases, freedom from cancer, of the cervix, freedom from hazards of birth control, freedom from self-induced sterility, freedom from loss of reputation, freedom from ruining your life, freedom to develop friendships, freedom to help others, freedom to understand sex, freedom to resist temptation, and most important of all, freedom to plan your future. And so we really want you to think long and hard about taking that avenue instead of the one that you may be on right now. Any other questions? Thank you for having me today. We have some roses here. I hand out the roses to anybody who attends my seminars. The white rose is a symbol of purity. And when I work with large groups, we usually hand out a rose and pass it around, and I tell people, explore this rose. Pretend you've never seen a rose before and take a look at it. And when it comes back, it's usually all ripped apart, petals are off of it, and it looks pretty bad. And what I want people to understand is that, we're all roses. And if we allow ourselves to be passed around from one person to another, we can come back very damaged. And when you go to choose a partner for life, and ask yourself, do you want the rose that's been damaged and been passed around, or one that's fresh and new and hasn't been touched and handled by everybody else? Which one would you rather have? And certainly the rose that is fresh and new is something that most people would desire for themselves. And so it's up to you to keep yourself as clean and fresh and pure as this rose. And I'm not just talking girls here. If you're a guy, you need to do exactly the same thing, and more important, you need to protect the women that you date so that they are fresh and pure for the person they end up married to. And so that's why we give the rose out, and we want you each to have one and take it home with you as a reminder of fighting to remain pure until marriage.